Okay, good evening, everyone. It is 6:04 p.m. on Tuesday, January 14th, 2025. This is actually our first city council meeting of the new year. I'd like to call the meeting of the Peoria City Council to order. I'd also like to welcome everybody who's here in our historic council chambers, as well as our listening audience at WCBU and our audience watching on cable channel 22. Madam Clerk, the council mics are open. Please call the roll.
Mayor Ali,
Present.
Councilmember Allen,
Present.
Councilmember Sear, Councilmember Gordon Young,
Present.
Councilmember Graham,
Here.
Councilmember Jackson, Councilmember Kelly,
Here.
Councilmember Euler,
Here.
Councilmember Riggenbach,
Here.
Councilmember Vespa.
Here.
We have a quorum present, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. A notice was received by Councilmember Velpula of the City Council in accordance with the rules established in Ordinance Number 16142. Councilmember Velpula would be deemed authorized to attend the meeting electronically unless a motion objecting to Councilmember Velpula's electronic attendance is made, seconded, and approved by 2/3 of the members of the City Council physically present at the meeting. If no such motion is made and seconded, then the request by Councilmember Velpula to attend electronically should be deemed approved by the City Council, and the presiding officer shall declare Councilmember Velpula present. Hearing no objection, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Velpula,
Present.
thank you.
Okay. Please join me, everyone, and stand for a moment of silent prayer, silent reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk,
We are at proclamations.
we have only one proclamation tonight, and our proclamation recognizes Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated's Founders Day and 105th anniversary. We have representing Zeta Phi Beta Sorority, Deborah Fagette and Jasmine Roberts. Will you come forth, ladies? Whereas Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated is an international, community-conscious, action-oriented organization founded on the campus of Howard University by 5 collegiate women on January 16, 1920. And whereas the women of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated have been guided by their core values of scholarship, service, sisterhood, and finer womanhood for the past 105 years. And whereas the 2023 State of Illinois Leadership Conference was held at Bradley University, drawing over 300 dedicated Zeta Phi Beta members from across the state to engage in meaningful dialogue and strategize for the future. And whereas since its inception, Zeta Phi Beta has garnered national attention with programs designed to demonstrate concern for the human condition both nationally and internationally, and locally, I'm sure. Whereas Zeta Phi Beta's chapters and auxiliaries, such as the Chi Alpha Zeta and the Zeta Amica of Peoria, have given numerous hours of voluntary service to educate the public, assist youth, provide scholarships, support organized charities, and promote social and civic change through legislation. Now therefore I, Rita Ali, Mayor of the City of Peoria, Illinois, do hereby recognize and celebrate the 105th anniversary of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated in Peoria, Illinois. Thank you. Ms. Paget? Ms. Jasmine?
Honorable Mayor Rita Ali, esteemed members of the Peoria City Council Board, good evening.
Good evening.
It is with deep honor that I, Jasmine Roberts, stand before you today as the chapter president of the Xi Alpha Zeta graduate chapter of Peoria, Illinois. And it is with great pride that we accept this remarkable recognition from the Peoria City Council. On behalf of our entire chapter and Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, I humbly acknowledge the proclamation declaring January 16th as Zeta Phi Beta Day here in the city of Peoria. This day marks more than just a calendar event. It signifies the tireless commitment and enduring legacy of our sisterhood. It is a celebration of our shared values, scholarship, service, and sisterhood and finer womanhood. We stand as a beacon of support for our community, a voice for the voiceless, and advocates for education, empowerment, and justice. Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated has, for over a century, been a cornerstone of social justice, striving to uplift and empower communities across the nation and across the world. From our founding in 1920 at Howard University by 5 visionary women who believe in the power of unity and service, our principles have guided our work to create lasting positive change. Our history is rich with contributions to health, education, and advocacy for the underserved. To the Peoria City Council, we thank you for your thoughtful and meaningful recognition. Your acknowledgement inspires us to continue our efforts and deepens our commitment to the city of Peoria and its residents. We are grateful for the opportunity to serve and contribute to this vibrant community. We are also proud to stand as an example to young women and men who seek to make a difference. Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated is not just about the bonds of sisterhood. It is about instilling a sense of responsibility to lead, to serve, and to uplift those around us. Together, we can accomplish more than we ever could apart. As we commemorate this day, let us all remember that our work is far from done. While we celebrate today, we are already looking forward to tomorrow, continuing to be a force for good, a source of inspiration, and a model of excellence in all that we do. On the behalf of Xi Alpha Zeta chapter of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, I extend my deepest thanks to the Peoria City Council, our community, and everyone who has supported us in our mission. We look forward to continuing to serve the city of Peoria with the same dedication, passion, and commitment that has defined our sisterhood for 105 years.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
dedicated service. Yes.
My name is Deborah Paget, and I am one of the members of the chartering chapter in Peoria in the year of 1986. On January the 16th, we in Peoria, along with other sisters around the nation, will be standing to celebrate our 105th National Founders Day celebration and 38 years of committed service here in Peoria. What has Peoria Zetas done locally? Well, we could keep you here all night, but we're not. But I'm just going to tell you a few things. As one of the 900 chapters in the U.S., we try to follow the blueprint that our international headquarters has placed before us. Since our inception, we have been small but mighty, working with different organizations in the city. And here are a few. We donated over 900 items and raised $16,000 for the domestic violence shelter. Donated over 1,000 items to the Dream Center. Raised funds for March a Dime, multiple sclerosis, and St. Jude. And every month, on the third Sunday, you will find members of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority, our brothers Phi Beta Sigma, and the Zeta Amicis down at Tree Wind Park helping Marketplace 309, better known as Peoria Grown, distributing fresh fruits, vegetables, and the like to the citizens in 61605. And everyone knows that's a desert location for fresh vegetables and fruit and milk. So come down to Peoria Grown and you will see the Zetas there in work on the third Sunday. Also, Zetas and Sigmas and Amicais together donated $5,000 in funds to help with the purchasing of goods for that organization. We have in the past also gone to the known as Elsie Allen School now, which was known as Roosevelt Allen, and did reading to the young ones on our lunch break. And these are just a few of the highlights of our accomplishments. If you wish to know more, see more, or hear more, please go to Peoria Zetas Facebook page, leave us a message, and we will contact you. As our chapter continues to grow, you will be hearing more about projects we are doing in the future. Again, we are grateful and honored to be acknowledged, and we extend our thanks to Dr. Madam Rita Ali, City Manager Patrick Ulrich, and the entire City Council Board, and thanks for all you do in the city of Peoria. Thank you again from Zeta Phi
Thank you.
Beta
You're making a
Sorority.
huge difference. Thank you so much. Madam Clerk,
We are at the approval of the minutes.
Councilmember Riggenbach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to approve the minutes of the joint city council and town board meeting held on December 10th, 2024 as printed.
Seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Any questions, comments? Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Valpula.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk,
We have one town item. 25-001 is a request from the town officials to approve the December 2024 actual expenditures and to approve the January 2025 anticipated expenditures for the town of the city of Peoria.
Trustee Graham,
I move to approve as outlined.
seconded by Trustee Allen. Any questions, comments? Please cast your ballots. Trustee Valpula,
Aye.
motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk,
We are at the consent agenda. 25-002 is a communication from the city manager and director of public works with a request for the following regarding various engineering services. A, approve the First Amendment to the Master Professional Services Agreement with Foth Infrastructure and Environment LLC in an amount not to exceed $500,000. B, approve the First Amendment to the Master Professional Services Agreement with HR Green, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $600,000. C, approve the Second Amendment to the Master Professional Services Agreement with Hutchison Engineering, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $1,500,000. D, approve the Second Amendment to the Master Professional Services Agreement with Maurer Stutz, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $1 million. And E, approve the Second Amendment to the Master Professional Services Agreement with Millennia Professional Services of Illinois, LTD, in an amount not to exceed $2,100,000. 25-3 is a communication with a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to deny an ordinance approving a special use in a Class R4 single-family residential district for a short-term rental for the property located at 813 North Douglas Street, Peoria, Illinois. 25-4 is a communication with a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance rezoning property from a Class P1 parking district to a Class C1 general commercial district with a Class R3 single-family residential district for the property located at 211 East Lake Avenue, Peoria, Illinois. 25-5 is a communication with a request to adopt an ordinance amending ordinance number 17016 relating to the River Edge redevelopment zone maximum distance from the riverfront due to a scrivener's error and to add parcels to the River Edge redevelopment zone. 24-345 is a communication with a request to adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 31 of the Code of the City of Peoria pertaining to stormwater utility. 25-6 is an appointment by Mayor Ali to the Peoria Public Library Board of Trustees with a request to concur of Detrail Davis and Kevin Kine. 25-7 is a reappointment by Mayor Ali to the East Village Growth Cell TIF Economic Development Advisory Committee with a request to concur of Daniel Rennick. And that concludes our consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any items to remove from consent? If not, can I get a motion to approve? Moved by Councilmember Euler, seconded by Councilmember Allen. Any questions or comments? Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Valpula,
Yes.
motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We are at regular business. 25-8 is a communication from the city manager with a request to approve the 2025 annual city and county joint legislative agenda.
Mr. Manager.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you know, it's that time of year again when we put together our annual wish list for our state legislative delegation. We do have a couple of additions this year and some items that we did take out. The initial, where we start is requests for direct sponsorship, those items where we're asking our local legislative delegation to take a leadership role in introducing legislation. The first is public safety pension reform, extending the amortization period for our police and fire pensions. Our currently police and fire pensions have the shortest amortization period of any of the state pension systems that have been created. The second item is more of a defensive piece. There have been about 12 bills that have been introduced already in Springfield with regards to rolling back the Tier 2 designation within all of the different pension systems, including Article 3 and 4 and IMRF. This would have a negative impact on our fiscal situation, adding more costs to us as the benefits would be enhanced for those current Tier 2 members. So we're simply asking that our legislative delegation oppose those efforts as well. There's been some talk that this was an effort to address the safe harbor provisions, but at least as it pertains to IMRF, IMRF employees already participate in Social Security, so there is no safe harbor issue there. And then with Article 3 and 4 with police and fire, there have been a number of legal opinions that have been generated that say that there is no safe harbor issue when it comes to those two sections of the pension. So that was the next request for direct sponsorship. The third pertains to the efforts of the state of Illinois to look at housing for people that are making between 80 and 140% of the area median income. Generally, that's been called the missing middle, the group of housing that and the needs for housing for people that are right at that kind of midpoint of where they're making the average median income in the community. And here we're looking at promoting three items. One would be a homeownership tax credit to encourage more private homeownership in that income range. Second would be a kind of like a LIHTC tax credit, but for middle income, that would be for multi-unit rental housing. And then third, enhancing the partnership between the state and our local land bank to encourage the state to assist with the acquisition and preparation of properties that could then be turned over into housing. The next item that we have is a carryover from the prior year, and that's the public safety amendments, looking at if there is a trailer bill that comes out pertaining to the Safety Act, that we look at trying to strengthen some of the designations that we have for mandatory detention for certain felonies, making felony in possession of a firearm a Class 1 felony, making fleeing and eluding the police a Class 2 felony, making motor vehicle theft and possession of a stolen motor vehicle Class 1 felonies. So looking at trying to strengthen the laws around that. The next item is the economic development incentives. We've, for a number of years, have talked to our legislators about the need for the state to have stronger economic development incentives in place to encourage growth in our communities, and this is simply that item that we have there. The last direct sponsorship proposal pertains to automatic law enforcement systems, whether that would be red light cameras or speed cameras, and having the ability to have that authority in state law here in Peoria. We don't have that authority currently. We have funding requests that we're asking that they be met. They've been authorized by the General Assembly in prior budget years, but we have not seen the money be released yet. That includes $25 million for Main Street. It includes $15 million for the riverfront. It includes an additional $3 million for MacArthur Avenue. It also includes $3 million for Pioneer Parkway. So asking that those dollars be funded. We asked for one additional vertical request this year. In light of what happened over New Year's in New Orleans, the police department has asked if we could see some funding to put in pedestrian barriers and vehicle barriers in areas where we have large crowds, but whether that be at the riverfront or along Main Street. In addition, we have two horizontal capital projects that we're asking for. That would include Pioneer Parkway, Pioneer Parkway, Laramie Avenue, and the Springdale Cemetery Road Network. And then we wrap it up with about 6 different items that are just really requesting position support from our legislators. We have our annual legislative breakfast is tomorrow morning at 8:30. Doors will open at 8. We are doing that in concert with the county and the health department. So you'll see kind of a combined program from all 3 entities tomorrow, as we've done in years past. So happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Councilmember Euler?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. One thing I don't see on the list that I think has been in prior years is a parking structure for the warehouse district. Is that something we can amend before the presentation?
Sure.
Thank you.
Very good. And I'd also like to point out that the council doesn't have to, every council member doesn't have to agree 100% with each of these requests in order to approve this agenda being presented to our state officials tomorrow. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Manager, I remember there was a period of time where we were looking to our legislators regarding the implementation of streetlight cameras in downstate Illinois. I see that that's not on here. Have we given up on that request? I know there was some challenges of trying to get that implemented in downstate Illinois.
Well, we have the speed cameras and the red light cameras are that item is in here, that under the, I think that's the last direct sponsorship request that we have. That's the automated traffic law enforcement system. So that's included. We've been working with Ameren on streetlights, and we do have, there is actually, that's another grant that we do, are waiting on funding to be released, is for the $2.5 million for some streetlights in a number of different districts. So we can include that as well.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry about that. I omitted that, so glad to see that in there. Thank you. Thank
Yes,
you, Madam Mayor.
that's okay, Councilman Allen. That's the one of them that I was speaking of that has some controversy to it. But you know, approving this agenda doesn't mean that you 100% agree with all the items on it. Councilmember Graham?
Thank you. I would like to comment on the public safety amendments, item 4. I think we all know that our career criminal delinquency problem here in Peoria continues at a very high level. Folks in every neighborhood in our city are being preyed upon, and our police are tired of the catch and release revolving door problem. From the river to our prairie land, the criminals and the delinquent perpetrators are very busy. From car burglaries, car thefts, armed robberies, carjackings to shoplifting incidents, we have a huge problem here in our city. Chicago may actually be instructive here. I never thought I'd say that. Felony theft charges there have surged by 154% since the threshold for prosecution for shoplifting and store raiding was dropped to a significantly lower level. Cracking down on juveniles here who are often aided and abetted by adults is overdue in every area. Career adult criminals need to be locked up for a very long time. Hence our request for mandatory detention for certain acts and taking away the discretion of the judge. We have to decide here if we are more interested in coddling criminals and allowing errant juveniles and their criminally negligent parents to slide, or if our priority in Peoria is protecting our law-abiding citizens. Now, this council has committed a lot of resources to purchase technology to help the police find some of these perpetrators after they commit criminal acts. But there must be real consequences for adults and juveniles who continually prey on law-abiding citizens. So what we're going to be asking for tomorrow, make no mistake about it, at the Gateway Building are common sense measures. For many sad, tragic, long, and sorry months, the Safety Act has been the law of this state. Those of us who knew all along that it was in many areas, not all, but in many areas problematic, are now demanding automatic detention for certain offenses and repeat offenders. Few too many have failed to listen to the cries of our law-abiding people in the city who want their neighborhood to be safe. Way too many people have already been injured or killed because of the inaction of the past and the pride of people who had to justify this Safety Act as if it was perfect. We also must pay attention to the real issues the catch and release practice has caused for our dedicated men and women in blue. They have been repeatedly set up for failure as they on a daily basis deal with the repeat career criminals and out of control juvenile perpetrators. Fellow council members, these amendments are needed. It's time for us to send a message. I look forward to tomorrow. The other aspect that is not here, Manager, which I think we ought to consider, and since I haven't had a chance to lobby each of you on this one, in a nice way, of course, we have a patchwork of approaches for our mentally ill people. We have many different agencies trying to address their needs. A number of years ago, those of us who have been in this community long enough can remember the huge Titanic debate that occurred over the closing of many of our regional mental health centers. We had one on North University, now an ICC site, called Zeller. I understand there is some thinking on the part of some of our state lawmakers that there needs to be appropriations to reopen some regional mental health centers. And if that's the case, I think it's clear that Peoria, which is the hub of the second biggest metro area in a state, should be on the radar. Manager, I'm going to have questions for our state lawmakers tomorrow as to whether or not this good news is going to get some wings on it. Have you heard anything? Would we be opposed to that?
Well, there was a press conference at Trillium a few
Yes.
months ago with a big award, state award that was granted to that organization for young people.
Yeah, adolescent and pediatric, and Mayor, I think that's great.
Yes.
And also the possibility that OSF, in concert with a private entity, may be developing a 100-bed psychiatric hospital on Route 91. Still is not giving us the capacity we need for our mentally ill in Peoria, the hub of our second biggest metro area. I'm not going to stop talking about it. And I'll tell you this, everywhere I go in this city, every single neighborhood association I've served in my years, either as an at-large or now second district, and with the second district boundaries changing, that's what I hear from people over and over and over again. Where's our Zeller? They know that name, but it's the same thing as our mental health hospital because the need is so great. Back then when we had the debate, they thought they were going to save money. I remember it. Oh, we're spending $77,000 per patient in a year at Zeller. You know, one homicide trial in Peoria County runs $1.6 million. 1.6 million. So when are our people going to come first and their needs? So, you know, I think that's an important issue. Also on this list, any of you who have driven Main Street, it's our Main Street, know that it's a mess. And for at least 6, almost 7 years now, we've been told that this money is coming. Main Street from Farmington Road down to the river, about 7 years ago would have cost roughly $26 million. Our experts tell us it's close to $52 million now. That's just inflation. Sooner or later, we have to know if this money is coming. And if we find an alternate source for some of these streets here, like Main Street, can the money, if it does come, be reprogrammed? I need that specific answer, and I need it tomorrow. Because from Bradley University all the way down the river, all points in between, this is a corridor of great vibrancy, and it's going to increasingly be that. And it can't continue to be the way it is. And that's all I have to say, Madam
Okay.
Mayor.
Welcome. Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to piggyback a little bit on the public safety amendments. And I'm speaking about something I don't know much about, but repeat offenders carry a very outsized responsibility for a lot of our crime problems. I'm not aware that being a repeat offender is something that a judge can use in assessing whether or not this defendant is safe to unleash without bail on the public. If we could have a subset inside that Safety Act that would refer primarily to repeat offenders, I think it would enhance the safety of our city. I have another item as well. Oops, went too far here. Oh, the preemption of home rule powers. I am not aware. Apparently, there's some move on to do this in the legislature. Mr. Manager, do you have the rationale for that? And
there's a consistent effort by the legislature to preempt home rule authority when they're passing legislation over the last several years. The IML has come out with a publication talking about preemption and the number of bills that have been passed where the General Assembly has eroded the home rule authority that municipalities like Peoria have. And this is a simple policy statement to say, oppose efforts to preempt home rule. And it is, home rule authority was designed to allow you as this body to make decisions on behalf of the citizens of Peoria.
does Chicago have identical home rule powers that the city of Peoria has?
Council Hayes, did
Thank
you
you,
want to
Mayor.
answer that?
The home rule authority conveyed by the Constitution to municipalities is identical as it relates to the city of Chicago
Okay,
and the
that's-
city of Peoria. But city manager mentioned preemption. So there are certain preemptions that apply to many municipalities, but don't apply to Chicago. The code word for that is in municipalities under under $1 million, or in municipalities under 500,000. So when you see that at the beginning of a legislative device, which is a regular event, that means everybody but Chicago. And that's quite a common practice because, as you can understand, all the representatives in Chicago is a powerful group that militates against reducing the home rule authority of Chicago. So over time, I would say that Chicago enjoys far more home rule authority without preemption. To the city manager's other point, this legislative session, there were 99 pieces of legislation introduced that preempt home rule authority. That's introduced. 7 of them were adopted. Most of those are severe disappointments to the city. And I would tell you that preemption is another word for disappointment because it takes the authority away from the individuals sitting right there that are right here as we're governing as an organization. Takes it away from them and vests it in folks in Springfield, only a few of which know us, know our city, know our challenges. So preemption is a really bad thing, and I would certainly hope we're united in opposition to that and implore our legislative delegation to simply vote against any bill that preempts home rule authority. Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. I would add that the IML, Illinois Municipal League, has an upcoming meeting regarding this very issue.
And to just beat a dead horse here, what is the rationale for these preemptions in general?
The most common rationale is a special interest group has, because of the relationships they developed through support of the legislative process of elections, bought their way to persuade the General Assembly to vote against the interests of our residents. In my view, that's the most common source of these problems.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Vespa?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a former public defender, I think I have a unique perspective on these proposals. I think about a client I had who was driving home from nursing school, was pulled over, and he had a felony 20 years ago, like 2004 or something. Pulled over, they found a gun under his seat. And, it could have been in the console, could have been in the glove compartment. But, that's under the law, that's called constructive possession if they can prove knowledge. And so he was charged with, felon in possession of a firearm. Thankfully, they didn't detain him because he was a nursing student. And if he had been detained, he would have failed out of nursing school and thrown away all the money and all the time he'd spent invested in that. The charge ended up getting dropped. It wasn't his gun. It was a family member who borrowed the car. And he ended up graduating and is working as a nurse. But I understand a lot of these, the violent crimes, aggravated vehicular hijacking, that sort of stuff, that you can push for mandatory detention. But something like that, there's too many people that fall through the cracks, in my opinion. I think you need to look at it on a case-by-case basis. too many people like my client there. So I would oppose that for the record. I mean, I'm not going to vote against this whole package. And as the mayor mentioned, we don't have to agree with everything. But thank you, Madam Mayor.
I appreciate that. You likely changed that man's life. So I appreciate you for that. Councilmember Grant?
Well, I wanted to briefly comment on the attempts to usurp a lot of our home rule powers. Most recently, our people down in Springfield were interested in taking away our ability to enforce our chronic, aggravated, out-of-control nuisance property ordinance. I think some of these large property development owners expect us to manage their properties. We have several that are very problematic in our city. We know which ones they are. And so, if we take away our ability to abate properties that have become fearsome centers for violence, we're losing a great deal of control for our city and our ability to protect our citizens in neighborhoods who don't want to live by chronic, malignant, out of control nuisance properties. I cannot imagine what the motivation would be to abrogate our chronic aggravated nuisance ordinance. When you have violent acts, we just had a problem on the west part of town again last night. Same places that apparently are not supervising as well as they should, or maybe qualifying their tenants as well as they should. Denise Jackson was here talking about something maybe not quite so bad, but poorly run. And that would be a huge blow to our city if we could not do something to abate out of control properties where we have criminality occurring on a regular basis. So that's huge for us. Do we believe any of these efforts are going to be successful, Council Hayes, or?
So we are pursuing in a number of different areas in town underlying charges that might ultimately lead to our use of that nuisance authority. And you're right that there was a threat during the last legislative session, particularly over the summer, of that authority being restricted. But it is a powerful motivator for responsible landlords to come into compliance and to maintain control and authority over their residents. But it's very difficult to put these cases together. Even the ordinance we have is very beneficial to the landlords and management companies because it takes quite a number of predicate offenses over a very short period of time in order to move forward with the nuisance authority. So it is a limited tool by way of use. It's more effective as a deterrent to continuing in discord rather than a tool that we often use. Because we don't have any cases right now that are eligible to use that tool.
But we're also going to be vigilant in terms of watching what's going on in Springfield, because I anticipate that legislation will come back, and we'll have to have that conversation with the special interest groups that want to pursue it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Again, and I guess I need to state for the record that I don't agree with every single item that's on this legislative agenda, but, in the past, we have not taken a vote on every single item to say that, we're only going to include those where we get a majority vote. So it's a pretty inclusive agenda that includes the requests and desires of some items that may not get a majority vote around the table. But again, it's up to the discretion of our elected officials, state elected officials, whether they would move forward with certain items or not. So, Councilmember Euler?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'll make a motion to approve the list with the addition of the warehouse district parking structure.
Okay, there was another one as well. Was Councilman Graves. Okay. All right. Councilmember Kelly, you second? Okay. Have a second? Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Velpula?
Aye.
Motion passes. Is that everybody? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
25-9 is a communication from Councilmember Riggenbach with a request to approve a grant award to Lula NFP to reimburse hotel costs for unsheltered individuals in an amount not to exceed $10,000.
Councilman Riggenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm really pleased to bring this forward for consideration tonight. As we voted on the camping ordinance back in November, I think all of us unanimously would say that our desire was to make sure that the people that were living there would find shelter. And there's been a lot of work done since that vote back in November with our service providers. I see many of them here tonight, representatives from the Dream Center, from Phoenix, from Lula. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, I've gotten to know these folks at a much closer level than I ever did before, and to see their work firsthand and to know them by name and to know many of the people that are living in the encampments by name, it changes your perspective at so many levels. So as the deadline for the enforcement of the encampments was coming up and the weather was changing drastically, Lula stepped up to the plate on their own dime and arranged some motel rooms at a local motel that they were able to negotiate a deal and put people that were living in the tents into shelter just as that cold wave was hitting us. That's not something that the city was comfortable doing, and there's a number of reasons on liability and whatnot that we didn't step into that space, but I think it's only appropriate now that we've seen this for the last 10 days and seeing how it can work that we pass this resolution and reimburse them $10,000. And I'll stop there and get some input, but I would make the motion to approve item 25009 as presented.
Okay. First, I want to applaud Lula for their work in this effort in trying to get individuals into a safe shelter, even though it is a temporary shelter. I know you've worked very hard at also trying to transition individuals from those motel rooms into either a temporary shelter location, Dream Center, or other locations, as well as into permanent housing situations. So I just want to thank everybody involved in this work for all of your efforts. I also want to point out that we, the council, authorized a little bit over $800,000 from ARPA funding, American Rescue Funds, for addressing the unhoused population. Do you have that exact number, Mr. Manager? Somewhere
Mayor, I
close?
actually think it might be less than 800. I think because we had to make a modification based upon some of the grant funds that we were closing out, so it may be closer to 680,000.
Oh, 680? Okay, okay. There was a reduction. I remember it started at over 800 and came down to about 600 and something. But, it is really cold outside still. Just reimbursing for that first 10 days to me is not enough. I'm hoping that we can extend the support to reimburse Lula through the end of February, and then see where we stand. Going to ask you to hold your responses, but to see where we stand after that time period, because we do have money available, and this is a critical time where it's very, very cold, Councilman Regenbach. And I appreciate your leadership in bringing this to the council, but I think that we can do more. We have the funding to do more, and if we could extend that reimbursement not to exceed $80,000, I think it would allow individuals to be safe and secure for a lot longer. And there's a reason why we're talking about reimbursement and not just an upfront grant. And I would ask Corporation Counsel Hayes why it's better for us to, from a liability standpoint, to look at a reimbursement rather than an upfront grant or some other situation.
Thank you, Your Honor. If the city makes an arrangement directly with a provider, there's some issue of liability for the individuals that might inhabit the space. It might come back to local residents to have to fund claims for damages and things like that. And so because of a abundance of caution for the public purse, we've recommended that this reimbursement model would be a better method for us to participate in what Lulu's doing and not have the taxpayers subject to that risk.
Okay, and then in terms of a reimbursement process, and I'm asking either you or the city manager, this is documented reimbursement, right? How does that process work, Mr. Manager?
They would have to document their expenses, show us what the total costs were, submit that. We would vet that through our finance department, and then authorize the reimbursement payments that way. Very similar to what we've done with other reimbursement.
Okay. Honestly, I just think it's reasonable that they continue this work and we continue to reimburse them not to exceed $80,000 through the end of October.
Yep.
If you would.
February.
Yes, October. I meant October. No, I really mean February 2025, the end of February 2025. Would you be open to amending that?
Absolutely, Madam Mayor. If I may jump in on that also, something that I've learned in the process of this is the incredible outreach that OSF has with their street medicine team. And Councilman Graham, to your point about the need for more mental health things, it's really, it's just so satisfying. It's so reassuring to see people like Dr. Staples and some of the RNs that I've met, Randall McCallan, that are going out and addressing the needs of the unhoused population. And that is under the auspices of OSF currently. So I think adding this as an agenda item on tomorrow's thing for our state representatives will be very timely, because we know that that is a big contributor to the population that is being unhoused. So any way that we can continue to help meet those needs and prevent that in the future. Clearly, hotel rooms is not a sustainable model for the long term.
Right. But
We still have, unfortunately, probably another 6 weeks of winter, right? We'll see what the groundhog says here in a few days. But I think that would be a great way to do it. And again, if you look at the agenda item, it says eligible reimbursable expenses will include the cost of hotel rooms, food and supplies, and related transportation costs. So we're very specific in what those are. And through our grants department at Community Development, there's a very specific way to be reimbursed. So I think there's some checks and balances in place here. It meets the need of the community, and I would be happy to amend my motion as you indicated.
Okay, is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Gordon Young. Continued discussion. Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very much in favor of the original motion. I'm not sure exactly what the amended motion adds to it.
The original motion was for $10,000 reimbursement, and the amended is modified to allow reimbursement for accommodations through February, the end of February of this year.
It's just sort of an open-ended financial guarantee.
Well, it's not to exceed, it's a reimbursement not to exceed a certain limit.
What would that limit be? I didn't hear that.
Oh, it was 80,000.
Oh, I thought that was just off the top of your head. $80,000?
Mm-hmm. There are over 40 individuals, I believe, that are housed right now in these motels. This motel, a motel, over 40 individuals.
And Councilman Riggenbach, this is in the spirit of your motion. Is this, would you agree with moving from 10,000 to 80,000?
My intention all along was that we needed to get something in front of us immediately because this has been, the expenses have been racking up since January 3rd. When I talked with Casey Bernard from Lula this week, she said they've probably are in that $16,000 range for the first 10 days. So doing some math in 10 days, that's an easy arithmetic measure, $1,600. So if we're going to continue that through the winter weather of February, I think that 80,000 is probably in the ballpark.
Did they ask for 10,000? Or did you come up with 10,000?
The 10,000 was a number, hearing what their costs were and what, it was relatively arbitrary, yes. But now I think the reason I can support this amended motion is because now we see after 10 days how it actually operates and what the costs are and how this non-congregant setting has actually been beneficial, not only for the residents, clearly, who are able to be out of the shelter, but it also helps those providing the medical care and the street medicine teams having the population in one place and not having to literally look for them. I think the fact that the city has designated this large amount of money for this, as we passed the ordinance, we repeatedly said we need our social service agencies to step up to the plate. We have an item coming up right after this from the Dream Center with showing their willingness to step up to the plate. Lula stepped up to the plate without any assurances that the city was going to reimburse them or that they didn't know if it was going to be a 1-week proposition or a 5-day proposition or whatever. So I think this is a very responsible next step to the ordinance that we passed in November.
Okay. Back in August, we talked somewhat about how we get people out from under these situations of substance abuse and mental health. When we came to the ordinance in November, which I voted for, again, I spoke, and I think some others agreed, we need to get a way out of this problem, not to continue just to support it. We need detox facilities. We need recovery housing where people are gathered together who are all trying to get out from under. We need more mental health work, more warehousing of the same problems. And the groups that are represented here have heard us say this, but it seems like we're not going anywhere with that. Maybe there's no money in that, I don't know. But I'm not willing to go $80,000 from 10 after
Zero. It's zero right now.
It's zero right now, and I agreed with you, Councilman Riggenbach, I agreed with you that I would vote for this. Did I not?
Yes.
Okay, all of a sudden we're at 80,000, which is an arbitrary number, came out of the sky. Okay, what are we doing to really help these people get over this? Okay, we have social service agencies that are housing people. It's not that they're not helping them, but we don't have organized detox going on. We do not have recovery housing going on. We, you know, we're just, what happens at the end of February? Well, hey, how about more money? How about more money? Okay? We don't want them going back into tents, so they're going to have a brick and mortar place to stay.
I'm going to let you wrap up and then go back to Councilman Riggenbach. Go ahead, Councilman.
I've changed my vote. I don't like this direction we're going. I think $10,000 would be fine, and let's get to work on what's really going to help these people. You know, the end result of a lot of what these people are into is death. They're going to die from it. Well, we at least have them a nice place to die. I'm sorry, that was too much. I'm sorry for that comment.
It was a bit too much. Councilmember Riggenbach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And with all due respect, Councilman, there are opportunities through many of our agencies to Pathway Financial, for instance, has a very specific rehab and detox program. There are other agencies that provide job training, and there's a lot of things taking place. Clearly, if we knew what the solution was, we'd be on the front page of every newspaper in the country promoting it to all the cities around the country experiencing this problem. There are so many layers to it. I also take umbrage to your comment about those people, these people that are experiencing homelessness, that are unsheltered. A lot of those are mental health related issues that as a society we have ignored for the last 20 years. So don't expect me to come up with the solution to that between August and January, but I'm trying to find a way to treat these people with the dignity that they need so that they can take those steps to recovery. And I just think that this is so important, that meeting the OSF street medicine team just about brought tears to my eyes to see the passion that they have and the work that they do. And they talk about those people by their first name. They treat them with some dignity and respect. And I think that's something that this 80,000, yeah, it's a lot more than 10,000, but I was under the gun last week to put an item on the agenda so we could vote on it today because the weather's not going to warm up between now and our next council meeting. So my intention was to have something here that we could talk about. And now we have 10 days of experience of Lula on their own doing this very project that personally I find worthwhile, and looking at what the costs are, that 80,000 will get us about to the end of February. And that's doing it on the back of a napkin, perhaps, but we're talking about a reimbursable expense, so that we're not going to be paying we're paying for very specific items that the city has a very strong track record in our grants department of measuring. So yeah, it's a lot of money, but our next item will be a lot of money. And I think that this issue is going to take a lot of money before there's any resolution to it. And I'm willing to take the first step tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you. Council Member Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you to everyone involved. I know the last 6 weeks or 8 weeks have been very challenging for our community. There's been a lot of conversation around this important matter, and so I'm glad to see that we are making some progress in getting our unhoused constituents into temporary housing. I appreciate Councilman Regenbach bringing this proposal forward. I think us getting our unhoused and stable housing the next 8 weeks and taking away that the hysteria and of the unknown, especially with these type of temperatures, I think it's a step in the right direction. I was reading Ms. Bernard's email that she sent earlier in the evening, and it talks about how those who have been staying in the motel project, some of them have transitioned into other housing options in the city of Peoria. And so I think over these next 8 weeks, with the 24/7 care that they listed in the email, they have volunteers on site working with our unhoused, that we can find more long-term housing solutions for them throughout this 8 weeks. And right now they're all in the same space. And so we can really implement this case management offense that's going to be necessary to ensure once the weather breaks that we don't have a revisit of encampments and things popping up, and unfortunately the implementation of the punitive nature of the ordinance that we passed. So I think this is a step in the right direction. I definitely want us to continue to think about long-term solutions, because again, this is just the genesis of this issue for our community. But I think we're going in the right direction. We need to just continue to keep treating our unhoused with empathy and respect, and I'll be supporting the amended motion this evening. Thank you.
Welcome. Councilmember Gordon Young?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was thinking about the work, not just that Lula does, but all the social service agencies in this community. And I just really want to commend you all, those that are here and those that are in the listening audience. As a mental health provider myself, the work is challenging, and there are far more complaints than there are volunteers. I'm very, very, very familiar with that. And also this, what we call the hot potato syndrome, where one person doesn't want to hold on too long. And to take the initiative and say, we're going to find a place to get you out of the cold and into a safe space, that's humanity. And I'm going to back and support the amended version as well, because this is what we signed up for, to help every constituent, every citizen in Peoria. And then there's this other piece, in terms of substance use and mental health. And even as a provider that often see it, I work at the jail, so I see it a lot where they're interchangeable quite often. But we also have to take note that everyone who is unhoused does not have a mental health challenge. Everyone who's unhoused does not have a substance use issue. So we have to look at people as individuals and not group them. And by doing such, we can really get them the care that they need and the resources that are appropriate to them. And so with that being said, let's not forget that it's a process. It's going to take time to build the new mental health facilities. It's going to take time and money and resources, but I believe we're moving in the right direction. So again, thank you for the work that you've done, and thank you for the work that you continue to do. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Thank you. Councilmember Euler?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just a few comments and a request of staff. Last fall, when we made the decision to pass the ordinance, it was certainly my intention, and I think the intention of some of my colleagues, that it gets us to this point where we're actually addressing the problem or beginning to address the problem. Some of these folks, this is not their first winter outdoors, and hopefully this is the last. But prior to now, it has been very undefined, very unspecific, no actual plan in my mind to address the problem. And I think passing the ordinance did exactly that. While it may seem an unorthodox path to get there, it's pushing to actually put people on the dime and try to do something about the problem. So what's been proposed tonight, and while we didn't discuss a longer term larger amount of money planned prior to coming into the meeting, I support it because I think that that is actually what needs to be done. And when we made these decisions last year, I expected the fact that this was going to cost money, but we needed to know how much money that was. And with the generalities that have been thrown out there for a long time, you couldn't get to what that amount of money is. And now I think that we are on a path to actually get to that. And so my request from staff is that on a weekly basis, we be given an update on the number of folks that are still in this circumstance, what the actionable plans are to relieve that circumstance, so that we can see that we're actually making progress and that we're doing something about this issue, so that we don't have to have this discussion again next year of how are we going to resolve this problem. Now is the time to resolve it. We've taken steps to actually start to resolve it, and we need to have actionable plans to address it now that we've gotten to this point. And so I appreciate the social service agencies that have helped us get to this point and address this issue. And now I would like to see that we ensure that we are actually working towards finding more permanent supportive housing for these folks, and not just writing a blank check to use hotel rooms over the next 2 months and the same number of folks return right back to the street that came off of the street, and that we find solutions and help fix this problem. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think a weekly report is quite reasonable, Mr. Manager. Okay.
We can do it.
Okay. We knew that the removal of abandonment of street encampments is going to cost money. There are documented studies across the country that it costs lots and lots of money to disband street encampments. This is a lot of money, but I'll tell you, this is not the end. This is not the end. And housing without services does not work. That's a documented fact as well. So we do need services. I do agree, Councilwoman Gordon Young, that everybody who's unhoused does not have mental illness or an addiction. There are other reasons, other factors that people find themselves in these conditions. But there are a significant number of people that are unhoused that do have substance abuse and mental health issues. So we want to make sure that we get the needed services customized to the needs of those individuals. And I too want to thank our service providers for all the work that you're doing out there to support this segment of our population. Councilmember Riggenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to wrap up, Councilman Euler, thank you for pointing out the need for that accountability. And I would tell you that I know that representatives from Phoenix meet with Lula along with our housing coordinator, Nicole Morrow, on a weekly basis, going through that specific, they call it, I think it's the by name list. I mean, they have a list. So that is absolutely a reasonable request and something that I have a feeling is already accounted for, just not shared with us. So obviously we can't get the names, but we can get the numbers for sure. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize Casey Bernard in the gallery here, and for her efforts in getting this for the last number of years in getting this off the ground, but especially this time for being such an advocate for the people who need her the most. So Casey, thank you.
Councilmember Kelly? Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you for correcting apparently something that I implied, that every person who is homeless is a drug addict or has mental illness. And thank you for correcting that misconception. I guess I'm going to vote for it. We've had almost 6 months. We've had 5 months. And the only thing we've talked about is housing these people. I don't mind housing them. We need to help these people. What we're doing for them is not enough. It's not compassionate. We need to really help these people. And all I see is, well, just put them in motels and we'll just keep paying and nothing else is going to change. I hope that is not true. We owe these people more than that. And I'm sorry I'm using the term these people. So I'll vote for this.
Okay.
But if at the end of February, we're still in the same place we are now, I think we should all have a hard time looking in the mirror. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Graham?
Manager, could you give us a brief thumbnail sketch as to when the Salvation Army expansion is going to conclude, not to mention the Methodist College of Nursing building, when that's going to conclude, which should be expanding our ability to house people, but not necessarily giving us the capacity to deal with the mental health issues. But if I could just know about that, then we can put the other.
Thanks, Councilman. I gave a look back to our Community Development Director and asked him to come forward and give you an update on both of those projects.
Okay. You must have been reading my mind tonight.
The Phoenix project will conclude in June of 2026, and the Salvation Army project likely around that same timeframe as well. Both should get started in the next few months, but as they're both multi-million-dollar projects, it'll take a while.
Thank you. When I mentioned the need for opening a regional mental health center, I said regional for a reason. Peoria cannot take folks from all these other communities. They need to share in the burden of this. And that was the beauty of having a regional mental health center supported by the state. I think we're always going to need the Lulas and the Salvation Army and the Phoenix, but the mental health component, I think, is critical on this. And Councilman Kelly, you're absolutely right. People who are perpetually unhoused are going to die 20 years sooner than the rest of us. So we do want to provide housing, but also we want to deal with the root cause of the housing issue. I've heard a lot said about how we don't have enough housing in Peoria that's affordable. And yet we've been celebrated as being one of the most welcoming cities in terms of our median income and in terms of our ability for people to buy housing reasonably. That's supposedly one of our drawing cards. So I just think there are multiple layers to this. We're trying to get through this hard patch right now. I think working together, but I really, really think we need to key in on the mental health aspect. Because I'm just not sure that, I like the OSF street team and all that, but I think we need to have the regional mental health. Yes, Bernice Gordon-Young, you're right. They're not all mentally ill. They're not all substance addicted. It is an individual situation. And that's to the beauty of what Councilman Euler has asked for. Updates each month on how many we have left, how many we haven't taken care of, how many are still out there needing a lot of work. We should be aware of that. But I don't want to see Peoria become the homeless capital of the United States of America. Other communities need to do their part. Hence my concern about doing this regionally, a regional approach. Because when the other city councils passed their ordinances, guess what? They were told to come here. We have people who are here from Chicago, from all of our adjacent communities. And, you know, that's a lot for us to absorb one community. I think there needs to be a shared responsibility. Anyway, enough said. Thank you.
You're welcome. Seeing no other lights on, please cast your ballots. Councilman Velpula,
Aye.
motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
25-10 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Community Development with a request to approve a grant award to Dream Center Peoria in the amount of $105,000 to expand their existing shelter capacity.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to turn the floor over to our Community Development Director, Joe Doolin.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. The item before you, I won't go into a ton of detail because we just discussed the issue at great length. When we started this process, we've continued to have multiple discussions with all our social service agencies about what we can do to increase capacity of shelter space to make sure there's room in our community when someone is looking for shelter. We had emailed all of our local shelters and asked where they might be able to identify some opportunities to expand what they're currently providing. The Dream Center came to us and approached us and said they met with our staff and all the different providers and went through the list and saw how many people they might be able to help if they expanded their shelter capacity. But because it's the Dream Center, they have a very targeted population of couples and women who are experiencing homelessness. So we talked to them. Most of the money that will be going forward will allow up to 3 months of additional shelter capacity for those that need it, not just those that are currently in the encampment, but anyone who might become unsheltered in that meantime too during the winter. And it'll be a good opportunity for us to see if this expanded shelter capacity program works, people take advantage of it. So then going into next year, if we have to look at a similar thing. So happy to answer any questions on that. Just want to thank Christy Schofield and Andy King with the Dream Center who are here with us tonight for continuing to engage us in this conversation and their willingness to do this.
What questions do you have for Director Doolin? Any? Councilmember Riggenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not a question, but thank you, Director Doolin, for being the quarterback with all of these agencies. And it seems like whatever challenge this council throws your way, you're able to keep the ball juggling as you work for the solution. So thank you for that. But I really want to thank the Dream Center also for seeing the need and stepping in. And I think that's something that in their history that they've been famous for, that they're not out there replicating everything that everybody else is doing. For instance, having a couples shelter, that's something new for us. So I think that's really exciting to see. Just as we talked about Lula and the last item, now Dream Center, these agencies that are thinking a little bit outside the box and challenging our thinking as well, because this problem has been around for too long, and I think this is only, clearly it's the first steps, but I'm really encouraged by it. And for those that had questions about us making Lula's item for 6 weeks to the end, this item also is for 2 months with an option for an additional month. So I think that just is kind of the model that we do, because as we're unfolding this and seeing what works and what doesn't work, perhaps in 3 months the situation will be different. So thank you, Director Doolin, and thank you, Dream Center.
I like that new title he gave you, JD Quarterback. Doing a great job. You really
Well,
are.
I do want to take the time then to recognize our staff who's done a lot of the legwork, whether it's with the ordinance or working with the social service agencies. It's been a really positive team experience to try to find some creative solutions to the issue of making sure that we can get people sheltered and the services they need. So shouldn't get the credit, my staff should.
Thank you. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sounding like a true quarterback there, giving your staff the credit. But no, thank you so much, Director Doolin. Mr. Manager, just a quick question regarding the rest of our allocations, should this pass, that is earmarked to address the unhoused issue in our community. Do we have a certain timeline where we have to have those monies designated, or is it just because it's earmarked for unhoused, it meets the spirit of ARPA?
The way, if you recall what we did in the budget, is they were ARPA dollars that we then kind of applied the ARPA funds towards other eligible projects that freed these up as dollars that now we can utilize as city funds. So they're there for the year. As we look at other circumstances or other needs, we'll be able to come back to you with recommendations on those.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I apologize. Could I just jump in with that money? So one of the things that is currently going on with the Continuum of Care is a 100-day challenge opportunity with some funds they got from the state. And that's a partnership of all the social service agencies and everyone involved in this around the unsheltered and city staff. And it's a 100-day challenge that started in mid-December, and really challenging them to come up with innovative solutions to make some long-term changes to this. Whether that's how do we bring on more units, how do we get more landlords involved, how do we do some peer networking to provide some long-term sustainable positive impacts on people unsheltered. And through that, there might become some other future recommendations on some of that funding as well. And then we've had discussions also with Phoenix and other nonprofits about how we might use some of those funds to get more units ready to move people out of, whether it's the shelter that's opening up or the hotel project. So as we go throughout the year, you might see some other recommendations coming forward as we continue to meet with all of them, really focusing on this population.
You're welcome. Turn it back to you, Councilman Riggenbach. You want to make the motion?
I will move to approve as outlined.
Okay. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Allen. Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Valpula.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
25-11 is a communication from the city manager and finance director comptroller with a request to receive and file the month ended November 30th, 2024, unaudited financial report.
Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're on to the November financial report, and Director Craddy is here to answer any questions or give a quick overview.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. In your packet was the month end of November 30th report. Through that end of that month, the revenues are down about 4.8% compared to our estimate of where we would be end the year, and about 0.5% lower compared to 2023. I've done some analysis to kind of look at, because we used anticipated revenues as kind of in the timing. What I have kind of found is that we front-loaded our expectations a little bit too much. So what I anticipate is that with the receipt of some of the state funds that we get that really start to come in all the way through March, we will catch up to that number and be slightly above budget for this year. So I just kind of wanted to have that on council's radar, is to not necessarily be alarmed at the fact that it currently is sitting at 4.8% lower. In terms of the expenses, we're up a little bit less than 1%. I think that also will moderate as we go through the year. Some of that also is just timing and when some of the ARPA dollars are being spent out of the general fund, so I anticipate that that will even out through the year. The report for you next month will be the last report for the year for the month end of December. The one thing I will just note with that report that will come is that will not be the finalized financials for the city. We obviously still have to go through our audit process. We have revenues we get that and expenses beyond that time frame. So the report, when you do get it next month, it will be for what we know at this point. It will not necessarily be finalized when we bring that to you next month. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Good. Any questions or a motion to receive and file? Move Councilman Euler to receive and file, seconded by Councilmember Gordon Young. Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Velpula.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
We are at unfinished business. We don't have any items. Is there anything to discuss? Then we would be at new business.
New business. I'm going to start with a new business item because this weekend, Peoria firefighters are hosting the Associated Firefighters of Illinois Honor Guard Convention downtown this weekend. This is the second year in a row that they've done this, and they expect over 800 attendees and guests that are registered to visit and stay in Peoria's downtown, our hotels and restaurants, and so we're excited about that. Councilmember Riggenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I opened my water bill this month, besides the usual reaction that I had, I saw this handout that everybody should have received with their water bill as well. Financial assistance programs. As much grief as we give Illinois American about rates and service, whatever the case may be, they do have programs out there for those that are having trouble paying their water bill. If you go to their website under customer service and billing, it's very clearly labeled customer assistance program. So if any of you or your neighbors are having trouble paying your water bill, help is available through Illinois American.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any other new business? Madam Clerk?
We are at citizens' opportunity to address the city council.
We have, let's see, 7 cards, and we start with Keishi Bernard.
The tone of how I'm going to address you guys this evening has slightly changed. I want to thank each and every one of you. I know some of you are nervous. I know some of you are all in. I thank all of you for taking a chance on Lula. We're deeply grateful, and just to be clear, the amount of residents that we've had stay in our transitional pop-up shelter is 61 as of right now. There is nobody left in camp as of right now. We have brought people in not only from the visible tents that everybody was so concerned about, but we've brought people in from caves they dug themselves, from drain pipes down by the river, from business doorways, from alleyways, from dumpsters, and from uninhabitable buildings. These are our most vulnerable citizens, and I know that you are worried about how we're helping them. Myself, along with every other service provider, try to steer them in directions that are good for them. You are all right. We all know that we need mental health support here in Peoria and across the country, right? We're in a mental health crisis. We're very excited for those projects that are coming. And we do need that sort of help. I think it's important to know that the people that Lula serve are the highest acuity, which means they have the most severe mental illness. Not all of them. It is an individual case-by-case basis, but they are the highest acuity. I could tell you their stories and it would break your heart. They're foster care children. They're victims of systems that they never quite fit into and failed out of. I was so overwhelmed with gratitude. I didn't really hear what the reimbursables were, but we have been doing this all volunteer, and we are running a high acuity shelter right now, 24/7. That's the only reason this is working, is you have to have 24/7 peer support there, because we do have unwell people there sometimes. This is the best argument for non-congregant shelter I've ever seen. The fact that some of our friends have made it 10 days and are continuing to thrive is a huge win. They are being connected to care, whether it's mental health, whether it's housing providers, whether it's other housing options, or just medical care, substance use treatment. If any of you read my email, I know Mr. Allen did, because he brought it up. We had somebody leave to go to treatment. We are trying to get people into all the services they need. We are forever grateful to Phoenix. They have been out there daily to help navigate people into care. Everyone we are working with is on a housing list now, and that's huge. And the reason that has happened is because we know where they are. We're not looking at the second drain pipe down on the riverbank past the oak tree with an orange rag in it. It's been transformative. Our service providers have commented several times that our folks are now decompressed, right? They're not cold, they're not dirty, they're not hungry. They are more willing and able to engage in that connection to care. But I'm not done, guys. We know this is a Band-Aid. We know it's transitional. We are forced to be in a public space, right? We would like a standalone brick and mortar location. What I really want is a tiny home village, because that's non-congregant as well. And some of our friends are considered unhousable due to multifaceted reasons. I would be able, with Lula and other service providers, to offer that housing for them indefinitely until maybe something comes to town that would be a better fit. We also need a drop-in center. So after the motel closes, people can still come and access those services. I will be sending all of those plans to you. I have worked hard with the other agencies to come up with these solutions. You guys all said you wanted solutions. Me and the other service providers are absolutely chock full of them. Thank you for your support tonight. I've gotten so many messages from our friends at the motel that were listening, and they were all so scared they were going to have to go back outside. So we are all so grateful from the bottom of our heart.
Estrella Diaz. Estrella Diaz.
Oh, lovely folks. Okay, so I wanted to say thank you all for voting, most of you. Thank you for voting the way that you did, just because I've had the privilege of visiting the unhoused at the motels. And my God, I had to tell you, the work that they're doing is incredible. The people that were unhoused, you can see their faces just brighten up because they have a place to stay. They're warm, they have food, and they're the most kindest people you will ever meet. And it's just to see you guys actually make decisions that are benefiting and working towards real solutions such as this, and funding the Dream Center, which I work closely with. It means a lot, not just to me, but to the people, because they are the ones that truly matter. And to see people like yourself, Mayor Rita Ali, Andre Allen, Mike Vespa, Bernice Gordon-Young, to see you guys consistently fight for the unhoused who are most vulnerable in our community, it's inspiring. That's all I wanted to say for that. But I also wanted to say the sorority that was here earlier, I just wanted to congratulate them and Denise because she's not here. But I admire the work that she does with Market 309 because my parents have benefited from that. And it also, I remember when you guys had to vote on that, it was a very close vote. But this is why it's so important to take into consideration about the way that we are voting, just because, as we saw with the homeless ordinance, it was a very close vote. It was one vote off. Peoria Grown, their program, Market 309, it was a close vote. And I think it's just, we really need to pay attention to what the people need, because we don't know how much of an impact that we are going to make on the communities that feel overlooked or are most vulnerable. And I just want to say thank you, and I hope you have a lovely day. Bye.
Todd Northcutt. Todd Northcutt. Kathy McNeil.
Hi, I'm Kathy McNeil. I've seen this process since August, as many of us have, and I just want to remind everybody that it is a process. Just like Casey said, I mean, they're making headway, so we don't want to be discouraged. We want to be encouraged. I lost my place. Well, I was just talking about the Peoria Grown. What a wonderful thing to have that. But if you don't want this Band-Aid stuff and this temporary stuff, where are the efforts to, what do you call it, get from the funders to have a frickin' grocery store in the places we need them, get rid of this food desert, and not have these, like you just said, you don't want these little temporary things. We want to fix it and not have this ongoing. I can't understand it, and neither can a lot of people, I'm sure. I'm not going to give a lecture because I don't like hearing them, especially in this chamber. You feel demeaned when you're being lectured. I mean, I know you guys have a very important job, but loosen up. Because we should never shame poor people. We should never shame people with mental illness, and not that you were. I'm very familiar with Zeller. I've lived here all my life, and I had to go there a few times. Thankfully, I'm in recovery forever. But I have also seen how the Human Service Center has evolved. You know, there was a time, I mean, I was much younger, but I mean, we had everything. We had the Zeller, and then we would transition over to the Human Service Center and talk about, I forgot what you call it, she called it something else, drop-in center. And there were even, that's a place for volunteers to show up with things like bingo and Christmas parties. And for the mentally ill, they need it just as much as we do. We need it too. I just wanted to make those few points. And, you know, I don't mean to be a smart aleck, but I mean, wouldn't not being hungry be helpful for people who are mentally ill? I mean, why are they hungry, some of them? Because they have to get on the bus and go across town to get their groceries and carry them in the cold and the heat. I still don't see why there hasn't been progress there. And this is something I heard from somebody else on another note, that a place, we're hearing that the Northwoods Mall is sort of fizzling out, and so that's, if you don't have to build a special building, if that was any way that the Northwoods Mall would suffice. That's just an idea that I'd heard. Thanks for your attention.
Tara Wood.
My tone has also changed a little bit, and I hope I have time for it. Good evening, Dr. Mayor, Ali, Honorable Council Member, and City staff. I want to tell a story that I hope will provide a different perspective to something that was said when the encampment ordinance was first introduced and talked about. We heard that only those who are truly compassionate about these people are the ones who do not want to see them living like animals. There was an audible gasp in the gallery after the phrase "living like animals" was uttered. That gasp was met with a doubling and tripling down on that sentiment, explaining that after decades of Peoria experiencing a homelessness crisis, those of us who are truly compassionate can finally do something about it. If it's been a crisis for decades, aren't you just telling on yourselves? Aren't you just saying that you failed the city for decades, failed its businesses, failed its residents, experiencing food, shelter, and healthcare insecurity? Yes, what Lula is doing is just a Band-Aid, but the city has had decades to come up with a plan that gets us to zero chronic homelessness. After hearing the back and forth just now about the $10,000 or $80,000, it seems as though there's a real lack of listening or maybe comprehending or trusting the people who are doing the work directly with the unhoused, like Lula and Phoenix and Riggenbach, going out and seeing and talking with these people face to face. So these people are the experts and they are presenting evidence-based solutions. So please listen to them. Stop just asking a bunch of questions over and over again that have been answered, or listen to them. Okay, now to my story. It relates to on behalf of calling these people living like animals. During my 2 years living in Ghana managing an agriculture project, I had a colleague from Kenya on my team named Stella. She has a PhD in soil science, and together we had a wealth of knowledge to introduce and scale up climate-smart agricultural practices. One day, Stella told me a story about a trip home to her village, and Stella, with her expertise and good intentions, tells her family all these ways they can increase productivity, practice regenerative agriculture, use trap cropping. Well, one time her sister finally spoke up and said, "Stella, we like the way we're doing things. We like how we're living. We're happy. We're fine. And every now and then we make some small money for extra necessities." You see, what we may see as living like animals or living unhappy or living without purpose is based purely on our own experiences and our own definitions of happiness, success, etc. This is not to say that the majority of people in encampments want to be there. I'm sure they want housing. But the wait list is long, and there's not enough temporary or transitional shelter for everyone, and the phrase, unhousable people, is sadly in our lexicon. So when there's nowhere to go, they create, they build, they innovate, they survive. Now tell me that does not result in a sense of pride and purpose and success. Our unhoused neighbors may look like they are living like animals to you, but when I go to these encampments, I see community working together in creative ways to solve complex problems and survive. Many of these neighbors have significant challenges that are not being met, and we must do better to help them. To claim they are living like animals when you never have felt the sense of pride that comes with surviving in a city that would jail you for the systematic failures of said city is very telling of your privileged and sheltered life. It also speaks to a failure in leadership and that you have not found or heard those constituents with definitions of peace, happiness, and success that are very different than your own. In closing, when this ordinance is overturned, the city will have to use something other than political grandstanding and laziness to solve the complex problem of homelessness. Our city will work with stakeholders, analyze our local data, implement solutions that are based on evidence from similar cities, monitor and evaluate the outcomes, and make adjustments where necessary. Most importantly, they will listen to our creative unhoused survivors, because those survivors that you believe are living like animals are forced to solve complex problems every day under impossible circumstances. And that, to me, is a definition for dignity, pride, and success. Thank you for your time.
Megan Ron.
Hi, hello. Thank you so much again for your decision on being able to help fund Lula and the Dream Center. I previously worked for Phoenix Community Development Services as a behavioral health counselor. I'm currently not working there to fulfill a graduate school requirement for social work. I'm at Dunlap High School as a school social work intern. Today, I met with a student who faces immediate risk of being unhoused post-graduation. And the reality of the fear and panic and dread that I had in my voice trying to explain to Dunlap staff of the necessity to get him on a waiting list now because of the fact that our community and our city decided to pass an ordinance that would criminalize him if he finds himself in an unsheltered situation. I don't know what to do. No one is immune to this situation. This could happen to anyone, and no one in this room is above it. Working at Phoenix and hearing the stories of my clients, and then coming into a school system realizing that this isn't just affecting adults, it's affecting our youth. It could have been that you were in a foster care system in an unstable household, in a situation that was outside of your control that you're now going to get blamed for. It could have been that a spouse passed away and it triggered a litany of other mental health crises that now you've ended up in this position, and you wake up and you ask yourself, how did I get here? It could be the loss of a job from an injury. It could be a sickness that is crippling. It could happen to you. It could happen to your sons and your daughters. It could happen to me. It could happen to anyone. And I think that's such a lost understanding in this whole conversation, right? But it really could happen to any of us. And because of that, that is how our policies should be driven. If this was our son or our daughter in this position, what policies would you want to put in place for them? Because at the end of the day, it could be them. Thank you for your time.
Our last speaker is Christopher Short. He left, okay. All right, Madam Clerk.
We have an executive session.
I would like to invite a motion to adjourn and to convene in closed session immediately following the adjournment of the City Council meeting pursuant to the Open Meetings Act 5 ILCS 122C2 to discuss collective negotiating matters between the city and its employees or their representatives pursuant to the Open Meetings Act 5 ILCS 122C11 to discuss pending litigation, and pursuant to the Open Meetings Act 5 ILCS 122C21 for approval by the body of closed session minutes. Moved by Councilman Euler, seconded by Councilmember Allen. We need please cast your ballots. Thank you for your service. We're adjourned.